in the coaching ranks. Quinn Snyder accepts a job. I think Woj said it was a 5-year contract
Yep.
for huge money. I believe it's for more than $40 million. And Woj says, and this mirrors what I've heard, that he's going to have some level of say over personnel moves. It's surprising to see that a coach of this caliber wants to take over a team in the middle of the year. Although, by the way, the Hawks have won a couple here, and on Sunday, Trae Young hit a very impressive game winner. Trae Young's already got a catalog of game winners in his career. In this one, he was able to get Mikal Bridges off balance. It was a terrific maneuver because Bridges, I mean, you taking Trae Young on Mikal Bridges. I'm taking Bridges on that matchup.
Right.
Obviously, great offense beats great defense, but I huge disparity in size, and Bridges is so competent, but he got tricked. Trae Young tricked him. Convinced him he was going to shoot. He went up in the air. He moved over and he got him, and they beat the Nets by 2. So I often say that if you fire a coach, unless it's a disastrous situation, you better damn well know who you're going to hire. Because I see these teams who fire coaches who it's borderline. I'll give you an example. The Charlotte Hornets last year. It's not that James Borrego was threatening Red Auerbach. That team had gotten better 3 years in a row and didn't make the playoffs because of some circumstances. They fire him. They don't have their act together. They end up hiring Kenny Atkinson. He backs out of the job. They end up going back to Steve Clifford. And no offense to Cliff, but it hasn't worked out this year. They were firing a coach who was doing a good job, and they didn't know who they were going to hire. Not that Nate McMillan was, again, Red Auerbach, but if you're going to fire him in that situation, you better know what you're doing. They did. It was pretty telling when Landry Fields, the new GM, at the press conference announcing the firing, said Quinn Snyder is the candidate for the job.
which also gave Quinn all the leverage in the world, not just to get.
I suspect it might not have been the first time they spoke.
Oh, for sure. But
was that
my
day.
point is Quinn was going to get exactly what he not just wanted, but feels like he needs to have a chance to win in a place where, honestly, like, do you think would you call Atlanta a good NBA job right now? Given the issues with that roster and what they've given up to put that roster in place?
I'm surprised he took this job at this time. He has his reasons. I was talking to a longtime executive in the league who I really respect recently, and I was, lamenting that Atlanta was underachieving. And he goes, "Are they underachieving?" He's like, "I'm not so sure they are underachieving. I kind of think maybe this is who they are."
Well, they made a huge win now trade, and if you're 500 after making a win now trade, you're underachieving based on your own expectations. Now, you can argue, is this roster better than the record? That's a different argument, but you don't give up 3 first-round picks, 2 of your own unprotected, to go get DeJounte Murray unless you think you're a team that's going to win.
No, I know they certainly thought that. But Bontemps, you think there's a reason why Quinn wanted this job now?
Well, I think, look, if like you said, if you're a guy like Quinn Snyder who has options, and we all know he would have potentially had options to wait and see where he wanted to go. If you're going to take this job in the middle of the season, you're going to step in and coach the team over the final 20 games, and you're going to launch right in now in the middle of a playoff chase and take over this job. It's because, like MacMahon said, you go to the Hawks and you say, "Hey, I want A, I want B, I want C, I want D, and I want E, or I'm not going to take it now." And they say, "Sure, we'll do all those things." Now, we'll see. The devil's in the details on all this stuff. We'll see exactly how it all shakes out. But to me, there's very little doubt that for him to walk into this job now, it's like MacMahon said, it's going to be everything that he believes he needs to have in place to be successful. And as a coach who, and again, I'm a big fan of Quinn. I think he's did a terrific job in Utah. He's a really good coach. He's also an incredibly meticulous guy. He wants things to be done in a certain way. You see it how his teams run.
That's not even, you're putting it sort of softly. He's extremely
He's a control freak.
Meticulous.
A lot of
Yes.
coaches
Yes,
are.
there you
Quinn
go.
is at the-
Yes.
Quinn,
And-
Quinn is, aside from Rick Carlisle, Quinn is as much of a control freak as a coach as I've been around.
Well, and I think Rick Carlisle is an interesting guy for you to bring up, not only because you know both those guys, but think about the job that Rick walked into in Indiana, right?
Yes.
Rick has a significant say in personnel there. Rick has a lot of control over what's going on there, and that really fit his personality. And I think if you look at this Atlanta situation, I think it's a very similar deal. Quinn's going to walk in. It's a young and experienced front office led by Landry Fields. He's clearly going to be able to have a say in what's going on there. They have a bunch of talent on the roster. They've got really dynamic, explosive guards and Trae and DeJounte. Quinn obviously showed in Utah. He's able to really, turn Donovan Mitchell into an all-star player. They had terrific offenses every year. He's a guy who's, I think, going to be able to get the best out of those guys. They've got young athletic players around them. AJ Griffin, they traded for Sadiq Bey. They've got Onyeka Okongwu. There's a lot of talent on this roster. They've got Clint Capella. Like there's
John
pieces
Collins.
to work with there. John Collins. And by the way, John Collins is another guy who, for whatever reason, past few years, his name has been in trade discussions constantly. He has.
The reason is because
like,
they've been trying to trade him.
Well, I
That's the
know,
reason.
but
Honestly, since before he signed this contract,
Right,
remember they went to the East Finals. I was like,
Yes.
well, crap. I guess we got to pay him now.
right. Well, and what I was going to say was that's all true. And my point was, for a guy like Quinn, I think he's got the ability to come in and find ways to utilize John Collins that can sort of get him back to the player he was a couple of years ago before his name kept coming up in these discussions. And it seems like his confidence taken a bit of a hit and he's become more of a bit piece there. So like, I do think there's a lot of talent there for a guy like him to be able to walk in, put his imprint on the place, build his own program, have a ton of say in how it all comes together. I think it makes sense for him to take this job. And again, the timing of it to me indicates that he said, give me these 5 things and I'll do the job. And the Hawks said, great, come on board and let's do this.
Well,
Look,
and I
one of his big challenges is going to be to get Trae Young to perform at a high level with his limitations in situations where relationships with him sometimes are difficult. And Trae has been outspoken this year, and he doesn't think he's been treated fairly and that people don't know what's really going on inside that team. He said it again the other day, and trying to defend his relationship with Nate McMillan. The last 2 head coaches with Trae have not ended well with Trae, no matter how you want to clarify it.
2 strikes.
Sometimes Trae can be a tough player to play with. So Quinn is coming from a situation in Utah where chemistry issues undercut what was a very successful operation. So he has now got to try to solve a situation where there are chemistry issues that have existed in the past, and he's got to deal with them going forward. He has got to figure out a way to make DeJounte Murray and Trae Young work together and be comfortable playing together, because if they are not comfortable playing together, they're going to have to trade one of them because they cannot let DeJounte Murray walk away. Now, that's not a decision necessarily for right now. That's not a decision necessarily for this summer. It is
this summer.
Absolutely.
This summer, there's certainly a sense of urgency this summer.
Well,
I'm not saying you
it
have to make the move this summer, but
it does feed into what Quinn could do for this last, 6 weeks plus the playoffs.
100%. I think taking the job now, one, gives him a chance to go ahead and, he wants to, trust me, Quinn's going to have some very strong ideas of how he can instill the culture he wants, how to change the culture there, how to, do all those kind of things. It also gives him a chance to evaluate the players that are on this roster. And for a coach who's going to have significant say in personnel, I think that is important. I think these 20 games plus whatever postseason there is, which if they don't get their act together, might be a game, gives him a chance to really evaluate the guys on the roster, because they are, every team has major decisions to make every summer, but the Hawks in particular might have some like franchise changing type of decisions to make.
Yeah. So, I also wonder, so they traded Kevin Huerter, who's been a significant contributor to the Kings, because at some point they weren't going to spend to a certain level. And I don't blame them. Atlanta's got to be careful with the luxury tax. I don't know if they can keep this team together, how expensive it's going to be. DeAndre Hunter's new contract kicks in, and they're going to have to take care of, they're going to have to take care of Murray if at some point. So
yeah,
I think they're headed for changes anyway. Whether or not it's John Collins or not, but I don't think they can afford
Murray
this roster.
trade, which made the Murray trade where you're giving up 2 of your own picks such a massive risk.
Well, I guess you could argue that there was 3 that they got, but they
one is that like the pick they get, the Charlotte pick via New York they got for Cameron.
Oh, that's right. It was 2 of their picks plus that one.
It's honestly probably not even going to be a first round pick, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, but they got a pick back from Sacramento for Herter, so it's kind of like net. It was kind of like Herter and 2 picks that they traded. They also traded Danilo Gallinari.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think who else they sent to San Antonio.
But who cares?
Basically, the Herter, they had to trade away Herter to make that feasible. Yeah. So I always look at Herter as part of that trade. Yeah. But there has been only a few coaches in the 20 years I've covered the NBA. There's only been a few coaches who have gone on to a team at midseason and taken over and made it any length of time. One of them was George Karl. George Karl did it in Sacramento, but the reason the Sacramento did it was because he did it in Denver and then coached the team for like 6 or 7 years and had some 50-win seasons and was good. That's the one successful time I can remember in the last 20 years. Maybe there's another one I'm forgetting. I think Lawrence Frank took over the Nets on an interim basis when he got his first job from Byron Scott. And he coached them for several years.
Nate McMillan did get to the conference finals in a similar position a couple years ago.
Frank Vogel did it with the Pacers, but that is guys who were in-house who got promoted.
Right. Oh, you're saying from outside, right?
A guy that they bring in from outside, like maybe
Lawrence was on. Yeah, Lawrence was on Byron's staff, so that's the
right.
That's
and Frank Vogel was on. Who was
Jim
the
O'Brien's
coach?
Staff.
Jim O'Brien's staff.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.